Welcome to the Coach Speak podcast, built for coaches, by coaches, hosted by Jamie Bolton and Dustin Martin, sponsored by Ray Crowther, providing athletic training equipment since 1932, helping you dominate with fundamentals.
Hey guys, welcome back to Coach Speak. Got a special episode tonight. Dustin Martin here with Jamie Bolton. And it feels weird tonight. We don't have a guest speaker on. It's been a little while since it's just been me and Jamie, but we want to shout out to our sponsor, Team Builder, the #1 software for strength and conditioning coaches. And I got a great episode tonight, and I'll let Jamie get into that a little bit more.
Yeah, guys, so we're talking about recruiting, so how we can help our student athletes get recruited. There's a lot of, ways to do that. Dustin's got a lot of experience in that as a head coach, and I've been a head coach and helped in that regard as well. So today we're talking about how to help our athletes get recruited. We're going to be, really pouring through what changed in the last 5 years, how the coach's role is evolving with that, and how to guide athletes, and then kind of leave you guys with some tools, tips, and maybe some red flags. But man, I remember one recruiting story from my head coaching experience. Man, it was like right after COVID, and these kids were freshmen. They're really, really good players. And one of the ways that we reached out to I think it was National Preps, and National Preps was able to look at their video and kind of give us a grade. And I remember the guy at National Preps, and what was his name? Jeff Mullen.
Yeah, Jeff.
And Jeff was really, really awesome, man. He said, guys, 5 years ago, these kids would have graded out, as a FBS kid. He said, now with the way that things are going, they're like Division II. And maybe even Division II All-Americans. And so that really helped shape me and guide me. And I remember talking to the families, man, that was a tough conversation, man. And so I'm glad we're getting into that today. But yeah, man, first, let's talk about the recruiting process and how it's changed maybe in the last decade. Coach, you can kind of start with that.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just, I think the biggest thing to look at when we talk about this topic as an overview of how it's changed the last decade is there are less spots than there ever has been. So that's the #1 thing, in my opinion, what's changed in the last 10 years. There used to be so many spots that rosters they were trying to fill at the collegiate level. And now there are more avenues to fill those spots. So in retrospect, for high school recruiting, there are less spots for high school players because they're going different avenues of the transfer portal and other things to fill those spots. And nowadays, the pressure to win at the collegiate level is you got 1-2 years to get it turned around because of the way that you can recruit these days and use the transfer portal and build staffs and build teams like that. So to me, I would say the biggest way the recruiting process has changed is there are less spots for high school kids because there are so many programs that need it now. They need that top factor now, which means they don't have time to wait for a bunch of high school kids to come in and develop them and build a program. Sometimes you got to come in, and I feel like what I've noticed is you got to build teams. You can't build programs first. It's teams first, win, and then you can build the program. Is kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a weird, man. Like the way that, I know I just mentioned it before, but it's so different now. I mean, used to, man, you're getting recruited by your junior year, if you're a Division I player. Now that recruitment might not happen until after your senior year's over. And we're seeing that now with some of our kids. They're like, man, coach, I don't have any offers. Like, what's going on? I'm 6'2". I run a 4.5, whatever. And it's like, I know, man, you're just not being recruited now. Your class isn't even being recruited now.
Yeah, that's crazy.
They're getting through the portal.
Yep.
And it's really difficult as a coach, a high school coach, to talk through that because the kids may not trust that. They're like, well, maybe coach isn't really reaching out to as many coaches as he should, or maybe, it's so hard. And I'm sure, everybody listening to this is feeling the same thing. But yeah, it's just so difficult for the coach to navigate. And then also the families. I mean, the families, the uncertainty of like, all right, where are we going to put our, where are we going to apply to? I mean, it's November of their senior year, and they got to get applications in, and they haven't even been recruited yet. Are they going to be Division II? Or are they going to be Division I? Navigate NIL, if that's even a thing. So it's definitely an issue. And so now, I mean, you got the NILs coming in and the transfer portal with really, like you're saying, it's creating less spots for athletes. But I think now what we're seeing is more spots being created at Division II. And even the community college level, the JUCO level, right? Because you're getting the added 2 years of eligibility. So that's something too for families to kind of think about.
Yeah, and I remember telling our kids straight up at Cannon, I was like, and this could be 100% accurate, but it's just kind of what I felt and what I was thinking is, listen, guys, if you're not a top 100 player in the country, you're not going to get a true committable offer before your junior year. It's not going to happen. And I remember telling our guys that, listen, the spring after your junior season is typically when your recruiting starts to pick up, because that's when, Henry, who's going to Harvard, that's when his picked up. Another kid named Jack Nealon, he just finished his junior season. He's at Mooresville now. His recruiting just picked up a bunch of Ivies in those schools. And it's like the sweet spot, unless you're a top tier, P4 type kid, is going to be the spring after your junior season. That's when your recruiting is gonna pick up, and it's hard. I would say one of the hardest challenges I dealt with is when you see these other players at other schools are getting these offers as freshmen or sophomores, and then your parents and your players are wondering, why aren't we getting those offers at this school? And it's hard to be completely transparent of, well, that kid is 6'2", 245 and has the potential to be an absolute freak in a couple years. So in a way, these offers are kind of like, hey, we want to build a relationship with you. And if the kid pans out, then it looks like, hey, we started that relationship early. We offered you early on. But if he doesn't in 2 years, they may not even be at that school. You know what I mean? And it's not that there's shady things done at the college level. It's smart and it's strategic. Hey, let's go ahead and get this offer in on this freshman who has the measurables to be a great player at our level. And it's really hard, in my opinion, to navigate that transparency with some parents and some players.
Yeah, and I mean, we're in the offer culture, right? I mean, like we're in the social media, like the offer is gold right now for kids and parents, and you could see that there's a big comparison thing, and man, it's easy to fall into that, I mean, and that's the world that we live in, and we have to be able to navigate that. One thing that I'll ask you this too. It's like when you're talking with parents and you got one school that's getting a lot of offers and no school, and then you have the other school that's not maybe getting so many offers. I've always wondered, like, why is that? And I'm sure the parents do too. What my take is, if a school is loaded with talent, right, it's easy for a college to go in there and throw a few offers around on maybe even some marginal kids because of the relationship he's going to build with that coach versus the other school that may only have one athlete. He doesn't need to necessarily throw an offer at that kid. And we've had conversations too, even talking about that particular student athlete. Like when he initially got offered, it was by Liberty, right? And they were kind of afraid to jump in because they knew that he was going to gain traction with other schools, and so they're having to play this game. And then, is it a committable offer before that time too? There's another kid in this past year at the school I was just at. He's got a power four offer from the SEC, and he wanted to commit before his senior year. They said no. They said you can't commit, and they asked why, and the coach like, "Well, we just gotta kinda see what we get." Basically, what it is they got a board of players at that position, and they're waiting for those kids to commit before and that protects them. That the college has to protect themselves too in this because what if the kid commits, "Hey, man, we got this guy locked in," and then he decommits before he goes. So that it's a very weird thing that colleges are having to navigate and the players themselves.
No, I totally agree with that. And I think the hardest part is, the transparency in that.
Mhm.
It's sometimes it's really hard to look at a family and tell them 100% the truth. Like, I'll never forget, there was a school that came by, and I was really trying to get this kid recruited. I thought he was a really good player, and the coach looks at me and he goes, "Coach, he's what we would call a wifer." And I was like, "Huh?" I said, "What's that mean, coach?" And he said, "My wife don't know anything about football, and she'd have to be impressed for us to even consider recruiting that kid." And I was like, wow. You know what I mean? And it's
Mhm.
like, so it's like, I didn't try to help get that kid recruited any less after that, but it was kind of like every school at that level that guy's at, it's like, are they all thinking the same thing about this kid? And recruiting is objective to a point, and then it can be subjective. People will take chances on certain types of kids, and based on who maybe their dad was. Did he play at that level? And so I think the hardest part is, you don't want to like diminish hope. Like, I would never tell the family exactly what that coach said, because there may be another school at that level that will take a chance on him. But
Mhm.
one of the things that was tough for me is, I remember having a conversation with someone with like, why don't we pick up the phone and call schools? And my biggest answer was, we have 63 schools that come by here in the spring. And what you don't understand is there's been a recruiting website that's been made with prospect sheets. So they already know every kid we have before they step on campus.
Mhm.
And like, they know who fits what
Mhm.
they need. And
Right.
a big one for me was, hey, we need to make sure we're bringing those players up and getting the coach's eyes on those players. And it was like, that's good and bad. What if they get their eyes on him and go, that kid's not big enough, or he's not tall enough? So I think that was a really tough one to navigate, to be completely
Yeah,
honest.
I mean, I agree. I mean, it's a lot of pressure on a coach to try to do the right thing by every player in their program, and certainly we want to do that, right? I don't want that kid to get recruited. Well, who does that benefit? It doesn't benefit the coach, doesn't benefit the kid, doesn't benefit anybody. So obviously, coaches want their players to be recognized and have opportunities after that. I think parents generally understand that. I think the parents look at, okay, what connections do they have? What I'm doing that in air quotes. What connection? Like, honestly, if you have a 6'5", 220-pound receiver that runs a 4.5, it doesn't matter how many connections you have. The kid's going to get recruited, right? And I think that's something that parents need to kind of understand and process. One thing that with the transparency thing that I think could be beneficial is talking to parents about, all right, this kid may be 6'5", 215 pounds, the strongest kid in the weight room, but maybe he doesn't have the greatest work ethic right now. Maybe he's a young kid. Let's say he's 15, right? Kind of immature, doesn't have great work ethic. Um, on film, he's probably going to have a 30% like loaf rate. Every 3 or 4 plays is going to take off. What? Why does that kid get recruited? But then the really, really skilled player that maybe even outperforms him and has better production, but is smaller and doesn't run as fast, that kind of thing. Why does he not get recruited? And I think that's where parents fall into the trap of like, why is that kid getting recruited, but my kid is actually better than him? Well, it's not about that. It's about your ceiling with those college recruiters. And I'm not speaking for college recruiters, but that's just what I've heard, right? That's obviously the data that we're getting is like, it may not matter that kid doesn't do every single thing right, because that recruiter saying we're going to get him in and we're going to be able to mold him into our system, and he's going to have a higher ceiling than maybe the kid that's already peaked, or the kid that may not grow anymore, or the kid that's already not as fast. And I think that's something too that parents need to really realize. And I think it's something for us coaches to be able to have those conversations with parents and be as transparent as we can. Like, look, yes, he's the best player on our team, but this kid over here is going to a way higher ceiling.
Yeah. Yeah. And my favorite thing was at what I did every one, and Caleb can attest to this because he sat in there with me, because I wanted him to, one, learn how it works and goes. But as soon as they'd walk in, we'd talk, that relationship piece, because it's not just what can we do for you, coach? What can you do for us? And that's one thing I think that if no one has ever sat in those recruiting meetings when coaches stop by, man, the first 5 to 10 minutes is chalking it up, man, just talking and having a good time, learning about them. You'll find out that, people that come through there, oh, I vacation in Pawleys, right near Georgetown where I'm from. And it's just that relationship piece. But the number one question I ask after that is, what class are you recruiting? Because a lot of the times it's not the class you think. There's still one class behind. I remember they would come by, what class? Are you on 26s yet, coach? No, we're still on 25s. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So here's what I'm going to do. Do you have any kids in your mind that you want to talk about, because you already have all the information for you got here? So they'd tell me the ones they're interested in. We'd go through and I'd say, here's some other ones I think you should consider. And we talk through those guys. And it's like, that's what I wish like parents could see how those meetings go, because there are some coaches that come in that go, hey, coach, we're looking at 25s. These are the 3 kids I want to talk about and I want to see. And I go, okay, coach, what about these guys? Do you care about seeing them? Can we bring them up? And they'll go, yeah, sure, go ahead. It doesn't hurt. Like, get the chance to meet them. And some of them are like, no, coach, we're good. These are the 3 positions that we're looking at, and these are 3 kids I want to see. And it's like 100% respect that, because listen, like, how many schools do they have to hit in a day? You know, like so I think one thing I really learned about recruiting early on from the head coach I played for, Coach Adams, was always be honest and transparent with the college recruiters, because that sets your reputation. So if you have a kid that you're having a lot of troubles with, and the parents and the families, there's a lot of trouble and whatnot, like, they want to know that. Not that we're trying to hurt any kids recruiting, but they want to know if there are any obstacles or obstructions they need to be prepared for. And if you say there's not, and then they go up there and all, you know what, breaks loose, well, then they're not going to trust our word with recruiting, and our future kids aren't going to get recruited. So that was one thing I made sure as a head coach was I need to be honest with the coaches.
And you know, one big question that we get now, how are the parents? That's the number one question we get now. It used to be grades. The number one question, how's this family? Meaning, do they have like an over-involved situation, or are they educated on the recruiting process? Because that's something that the recruiters now have to navigate too, because especially if they're a big time prospect, it's like, well, now there's going to be questions about NIL, questions about, you know, all that stuff that factor in, and a lot of recruiters don't even want to talk about the money until they're, you know, with those families. So that's something too. But you know, the camps are something big now too for kids, right? Like, you're probably not going to get recruited unless you go to camp. And what I've learned in the last, you know, 5 or so years is they're looking for a verified time or something verified. And I'm on the strength conditioning side of things too, and, you know, max velocity or peak velocity, or, you know, whatever. Recruiters still use the 40 time. So the 40 time is still something the
100%,
NFL.
because
Yep.
football coaches aren't strength coaches.
Right.
And like that was something that I think sometimes strength coaches have a hard grasp. It's like, listen, man, I believe in 10 and 20 meter flies, but there's been no college coach that's come through our program and said, hey, what's his 10-meter fly time?
And the reason is because we don't have not every school has the technology to do that, right? Like, you go from school to school, yeah, like Canon may have all the dasher system or whatever, and but the other school may not have that. So you gotta compare apples to apples here. So usually why they do that, why they ask you to come to camp, is so they can get a verified 40. And so once you have the verified 40, then you check out. Then they go look at the film, or the film checks out, right? It's like, and that thing, and film's another thing too, man. Like, the film, um, and before I get to film, man, stats, like, stats don't really even matter.
No.
Like, people get so hung up on these stats, for recruiting purposes, quote unquote. Now, I think stats are important for kids to be recognized and all that, but the number one stat's winning,
Winning.
and people want winners. But like, like, no recruiters ask me how many rushing yards a running back had,
Well, it's
or
like,
how many touchdowns. Like, because and the reason is because, well, like, there's so many variables.
yeah,
It's like, do you run the ball?
yeah.
It's like, is the offensive line good? You know, who are you playing against? Like, it's a lot of variables for recruiters to try to navigate. What do these stats even mean? So go to camp, the film, you got the film, so they can kind of see you move. They want to see it at camp and see you in person, see you run a live 40 and have a verified time, and then see how well you move in person. They want to see it, man.
Yeah, man, and I think that's valid. I got to bring this part up. You know, the film part. The film part can be important because it can show what they do, but it's only to measure your exact, like, how are you on the field? Like, they don't care that you had 10 touchdowns that game. No, how do you run your routes? You know, what does your acceleration look like? What is your stick out of your break? You know, all those things. But it's like, you know, I'm an athletic director now. We're going to have to hire a head coach soon, and it's open right now. And I think this is very similar to the recruiting aspect. Like, when I look at it, when you interview and you submit your stuff for a job, you know, you submit your resume and your cover letter. Well, your resume shows what you've done, you know. So what I like to say to people is when we're interviewing, like, listen, I hold their resume up and I'm like, this is what you've done. This is what got you in the door. And then I ball it up and throw it in the trash. And I say, I don't care what you've done. I care about who you are now, because this got you in the door, but now I want to know who you are, because the paper doesn't tell me the true story. You could have won 3 state championships with the best athletes in the state playing teams that are no good, or you went 500, but were you playing these really good teams with mediocre talent? You know what I mean? So it's like you said, there's so many variables. And I think it's just like that with stats. Like, in my opinion, a resume for a coach or a teacher or whatever is kind of stats on what you've achieved, but no one knows how you achieved it or what the level of the playing field was as you achieved it. And I think that's kind of whole circle that we're trying to teach these kids when it comes to recruiting. Stats are important for our team, but it's like they don't care that you caught 10 touchdowns in the last 3 games, because were you playing a post-grad school with a bunch of kids that aren't being coached? It's so I think that's a really important part. But one thing I like to always tell our people is, in the recruiting, there are program responsibilities that we're responsible for, and then there are athlete/family responsibilities. And the biggest thing I try to get across is, as a football program, we're going to value grades to help to keep those first. We're going to distribute your information out. And I make a fine line right after that one is, I cannot get anybody recruited. Like, no one's going to give an offer to a kid because of who I am. I can't do that. And then I try to tell them that we're going to help your character and your work ethic and guide you through the situation. Like, that's our role. And then I like to tell them, you as a player, and I need to adjust this because based on what we're talking about, is the number one thing is, how does the family react? Like, how is the family? Because that's becoming a good one. And I have a story for that in a second, but it's really grades. But the one that people forget about the most is, you have to have the ability to play at the level you're wanting to get recruited at. And so what I tell our kids is, hey, where do you want to play? What's your dream school to play for? And they say it. And I'm going to say, okay, I want you to go pull up their last 3 rosters and the position you play, and just write down all the heights and weights in that position. And if you are in the same ballpark, you probably have a shot. And then it goes to the athletic ability. But if I'm saying I want to go play running back at Georgia, and I'm 5'4", 130 pounds, and I go and I write down all the heights and weights of all the running backs that came through Georgia in the last 3 years, nowhere close. Probably not realistic. Not saying you can't be an outlier. Not saying you can't be the Hunter Renfro who, we played against in high school, and he is just one of the most athletic guys I've met, who just signed with the Panthers. But that doesn't happen as often as it does, So that's kind of what I think.
Yeah, too, and I think too, as a head coach, the role, you have to establish a culture at your, in your program that produces, or at least has the perception of producing, like, high character individuals too. And I think that's something too, as a coach, that you want to be able to come in and year after year, you're producing um these athletes that have, characteristics that will value the program that they go play for. And so I think when coaches realize that, hey, they came from this school, man, that we need to go recruit this school, because everyone that we've seen go, like, they've finished, or they've turned out to be a really, really good player. And that's not going to happen every single time, but having that reputation as a program is so important. You could see why recruiters go to these schools that have that reputation over
Yes.
and over and over again. And I think that's something too. And again, that's academically too, right? It's like, if you have the academics, you have the character, you have, winning pedigree, you're going to get some high quality athletes. And I think that allows recruiters to take some chances on marginal players, because they know they have the added uh, it factor when it comes to those intangibles that necessarily can't measure on paper. So I think that's something too, as a coach in this new recruiting era, how that role can evolve as we go through.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that, like you said, you want to give the coaches that are recruiting the school more reasons to come back, because,
Mhm.
as well as I do, there are some people that play very sophisticated schemes that really require a lot of different alignments and checks and eye control and these things. And I think that goes a long way with you, like you said, with those marginal players. Like, okay, this kid's kind of on the fence for us, but based on who we've had come play for us out of this program prior, we know that day one when they hit it, they're going to know how to block inside zone. It's not just gap down backer and down block. You know what I mean? Like they're going to be able to they're going to be able to play match coverage. They know how to read 2-1, and then also if a fast three is involved and some different things of that sort. And I think that's really good, man.
Yeah, and Joe,
I agree.
like I remember, I can't remember who it was, but I think it was a recruiter when we were at York came by, and he was talking about a lineman that he got from a school down the road. And to your, I think their first spring there, they were trying to install a run, and he was like, "Okay, to the boundary we're going to do this, and to the field we're going to do this." And the kid, after about 10 minutes, raised his hand. He said, "Coach, what's the boundary?" And so we don't want to have that, come from our program. That's us doing a disservice by the kid. That's not the kid's fault. That's our fault as coaches. Right. And I think when I know you do this too, as our football 101, they're going to have that foundation. They're going to have that framework. And then obviously we're going to run, quote unquote college level systems in high school that, it's a little bit more advanced. They're going to have a little bit greater ownership of their position, and communication is going to be at a high level. So I know that when we speak to these recruiters, it's like, look, man, this is kind of what we do. This is what you should expect from this player. Like, and you can tell a story. Hey, man, in game we made this adjustment, and the kid. And so when they talk to that kid, they can feel comfortable asking those questions. And so I think that's something too, as a role in this recruiting process, how you can try to maximize um, the exposure of the kids with that.
I know when we had college coaches that come by and they were defensive guys, and we'd sit down and talk, and they kind of asked what we ran. And, when I tell them that we strong and weak rotate, we play some flood coverage, some match coverage. I said, but we also have the ability to bracket and cone certain receivers inside and outside. Like that, their ears kind of stand up, because it's like, like these kids are doing some tough stuff already at this level. And I think that matters. And so it's funny, the school I just left, one of the players has chosen to go to another school, and just talked with his dad the other day, checking up, making sure everybody's good. And he was telling me that he's already started working out and doing meetings with that school, and that it was his first week there, and they're going over some install stuff in the classroom. And the coach asked a question, and he's the only one that raises his hand to answer the question. And he's only been there a week. And his dad was like, man, he was like, how does this kid who just got here know the answer to these questions? And I told the dad, and this isn't anything I did or Coach Hughes did or anything, but it's like, we took pride in teaching these kids the game. Like that, like we're teachers first. So when we sit down and go football 101 and we teach them the game, like I expect that out of them. It's not like, oh man, he knew. No, like he should know that, because if he doesn't, he's not going to be a great player or get to the level he wants to be.
Right.
And another story I got, I need to tell this one. I was talking to a basketball coach the other day, and he said that there was a situation with his buddy and the team he coaches where this school, it was a Power 5 school, came by to recruit this basketball player. And so the coach put one of the kids on his team on that kid, because they knew they were watching that kid, to try to give him some shine time. And apparently the parents in the stand were just like going above and beyond, like everything they were saying. It was a really bad environment. And the coach walked up and said, I come to recruit this kid, but I can tell you what, I will never recruit that kid, just because of the atmosphere and the environment. And one thing, if I could tell parents moving forward, because it's not all parents, you affect your kids' recruiting more than you ever know. And I know there are some kids who had a really high level, and they could have went really high, and their parents involved messed their recruiting up. Across the last 10 years we've been coaching, we've seen it at multiple schools.
And I wanna put and look, it's no one's fault. And I think if you look through the parent's lens, I think that's the biggest thing that I try to do as a coach, is I try to look through it as a parent, and they want the best for their kid.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes parents get in the way a little bit, and they need to allow coaches to help them. And I know that not every coach is capable of doing that, right? I get that. But I do see where parents are coming from. But I think in light of all of the social media, the hype, all this stuff, don't get caught up in that, because really that doesn't mean anything. The highlight videos don't mean anything. The offers that you post don't really mean anything. To a degree, they do. They get you some traction. But what means more to that recruiter is how he talks in front of him when he meets him, right? That first impression, like an interview. And if they see all this hype and they see the videos and they see this and that, and it doesn't match up with the player and the values that they exude, right, in that conversation, then it doesn't matter. It's just not going to vibe, especially if you're kind of on the cusp. Like if you're just, like it's like, for instance, if you're an FBS maybe kind of kid and you're trying to break through an FBS, which I guess is not really FBS anymore, subdivision, whatever it's called. Uh, if you're really trying to break through there, I think it's really, really important that you do everything right, from the way that you dress, from the way that you speak, to your work ethic, all of that. I think as parents, you have to be super intentional on that part with your kid, because if any of those things don't vibe, they're not going to take a chance. Then yeah, you can go play D2,
Yeah.
right? Because you're a higher talent, but it's a sliding scale, right? Like it's like if your talent's way up here, but your character or what you show about your character is down here,
Mhm.
then you're gonna slide down, right? So I think those are just things that are important for parents to remember, especially now because there's so many kids that wanna get recruited, right? The market is flooded. Everybody's got a personal trainer. Everybody's got a strength coach. Everybody's on a nutritional plan. Everybody's got help, tutors, and all this stuff for
Mhm.
GPAs and stuff and ACTs. Like it's so competitive right now, and that's putting a lot of pressure, which
Sure.
is going to be going into our next segment. How much pressure is being put on kids right now?
Yep. No, it's funny because, I know you train quarterbacks and I've been training tackling through VTA and, you know, my target area was middle school and it was all about safety and performance. But man, I got 3 to 4 consistent 4th and 5th graders right now who are already grinding because they want to be the best. And, I ask kids straight up, like, I want to know what they think. You know what I mean? Like, hey, do you enjoy coming? Like, is this fun to you? Yes, sir. I want to be really good. But, and I know that tackling, I just need more reps to become
Mhm.
better at it. And it's like, you can tell the kids that want to be there and the kids that parents want them to be there. And one thing I will say is all the kids that I've trained so far, man, they have a different drive. And it's crazy because you just start seeing it at earlier and earlier ages. And I enjoy it, man. But I think this is a good time too to give a shout out to Team Builder, because I can definitely speak that we've both seen firsthand how important it is organizing training for athletes. And that's why I trust Team Builder. It's the platform that it kind of takes the guesswork out of it. It allows you to plan, program and put specific percentages and reps. And the best part is you have all of your workouts and exercises uploaded and you can change your, if you want to hit the same kind of lift, but you want to change what variation you're using, it's very easy to with change and it allows interaction and accountability from the player. And that's the one thing I like. It's like, listen, you have to have the drive and accountability to type your numbers in, type how many reps you got, type the weight you did. So it auto populates, man. I think Team Builder's a game changer.
Yeah, and I think any coach listening to this, I mean, we really believe in them, and there's other ones out there, I'm sure, but there's nothing that really quite does it like Team Builder. I mean, they have a 30-day trial. I would say anybody listening, just do a 30-day trial as you go into summer. Like
Yep.
take the next couple weeks. We're gonna have a couple strength coaches on, and the next couple weeks with our strength week, and all of them use Team Builder, I believe. So I know some have already even talked about that, but here's what I like about Team Builder too from a recruiting standpoint. So I can get these printouts and reports and send them directly to the coaches. We had a recruiter come in the other day. He's walking through the weight room. We have all of our iPads up and it's got the workout. He's like looking and seeing like what the kids are supposed to be doing and looking at the weight and the percentage and all that. And it's an impressive thing for coaches to come in and look at from a recruiting standpoint. It gives you some credibility, and then it also allows you to collaborate too among other coaches, so you can like share workout programming and all that. And if you're a strength coach for multiple sports, man, now you can set up your rosters. It just does a lot of things that kind of alleviate the pain points of like doing it on like spreadsheets and then having to go over there to the percentage chart and do all that mess. So Team Builder, literally, man, is probably going to take you to the next step. It's not going to make you, the ultimate strength coach of all time, but it's definitely going to accelerate your ability to make your programming even better. So, man, just do the 30-day free trial. I believe it's coach speak. I would do that like right now. Just go ahead and do that. Get the 30-day free trial. And you'll even get set up with a consultation too. They're great over there. Anytime that we've dealt with them, which we haven't had to, man, they don't have any bugs in their system, it seems like. And but man, it's been great. But yeah, man, let's get on to segment two. Let's talk a little bit about pressure on athletes. This is something that is concerning to me as well in all of this. And I know everybody's seeing this. It's not only pressure on the coaches, but more so the athletes. I mean, we're adults. We should be able to handle a little bit of stress when it comes to that. But players, let's talk a little bit about unrealistic expectations in the offer culture. So, what pressures do you see now that maybe didn't exist maybe when you were playing or even in your early coaching years?
Well, I'd like to start off first with, I think there are some similar pressures to when I was playing. I always felt like there were a couple kids on every team that were playing to better their situation for them and their family. Like,
Mhm.
just because the opportunity financially maybe wasn't there for them to go to the next level without sports. And you still see that these days. I don't think that part has changed. You still have the kids who are like, I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to show up and I'm not going to do exactly probably what I want to do because I'm going to try to put myself and my education above all else. And so I think there are some pressures that are exactly the same. And then I do think there are some that are completely different. I remember, and man, I mean, I graduated high school in 2013. So, we just hit 11, 12 years. Like, I haven't been out of high school that long, but man, like, Instagram just became a thing when I was in high school. Snapchat became a thing. Twitter was kind of a thing back then, but it's like it wasn't I feel like we didn't live in a world of look at me, look at me, look at me. Like it
Mhm.
wasn't like that. Like you still had people who were posting on Facebook where they went on vacation, and you had like I remember
Dog pictures.
taking pictures with peace saying
Yeah.
YOLO, like you only live
Yeah.
once. But it's
Yeah.
like it wasn't such a comparison thing. And I
Mhm.
don't think at the time it was let me make my life look like it's enjoyable enough for everyone to want to follow and see what I'm doing. And I feel like these days, kids sometimes think it's about that. It's, man, like day in the life of a D1 athlete. Like, man, that's what I want. Like, man, they get up and get breakfast made by a chef and they work out and
Yeah.
they have a smoothie protein shake that is specifically,
Ice bowl.
yeah, made for them. They put their face in the ice bowl and it's like, oh, I got 2
Uh,
hours
yeah.
at rehab and with the athletic trainer of getting my own personal massage. It's like, so I guess the biggest pressures is living up to the hype, like realistic versus unrealistic. That, in my opinion, that is such a big pressure in athletes today is, man, one, I don't want to get compared and not be where I need to be. That's the biggest one, I think.
It's looking at this is almost sad in a way. And not that I'm sad that these kids like I think it's always good and bad. But one thing that I think about, there's kids are being afforded a lot of opportunities after high school like never before, right? There's more scholarships being offered now, right? At the bigger schools. I believe that schools like smaller schools are bringing in big populations of student athletes to fill rosters and all that stuff. But if you want to play, you could probably find a place to play. Like it's not that difficult. Now, depending on where that is and your expectations of that are different. But what's sad to me is to look at children in high school. These are kids not enjoying the game because of these external pressures on them. It's like middle school was their last stand when it came to like having fun. Like it was probably so we should say high school is the purest form of football, man. High school football is pure, man. Like it's like you're about the team and you're about the community and the city championship or the conference championship, man, everything, man. Well, that ain't it no more. That's now in middle school, right? Like now it's once you get into high school, well, who's recruiting you? How many stars do you have? Looking at so and so at the stars down the street. Well, coach isn't doing this right or coach isn't doing that right. Well, heck, man, the coaches are still living back where high school is the purest thing now. And now you're seeing coaches have to take a different avenue. They're having to adapt. And now, man, you got a game that's not the same game that we played, even though you graduated only like 2 years ago or whatever it was. right? So, I mean, it's seriously though, it's a different game. I mean, it really is. It's becoming, especially at the bigger schools with a lot of athletes, it is becoming a recruiting mess. And I know in a future episode we're going to be talking about controversial topics with like why kids are transferring now for this very reason. It's becoming the new college. I mean, it really is. And
Mhm.
so we're seeing that kids are facing this, and there's probably a lot of. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of mental issues with that too. So that's something that we're having to work through as coaches and parents as well.
Well, I think, and this will probably be one of our controversial topics. I think it's good to talk about, but I'm gonna briefly touch on it. Twitter or excuse me, X is amazing, man. Like it is. I mean, we live in a day and age of X where kids will post in 10th grade that I appreciate so and so high school, but I'm going to be transferring and playing at so and so high school. And you know, I'm not going to say that I think that's right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm not going to voice my opinion on it, but here's what I will say. And I think this is something that all coaches need to hear. We always talk about adapting with the times and staying ahead. If you are not finding ways to promote your program and adapt to the new age of football, you won't survive. And because one part, in my opinion, of being a head coach and running a program, one of the main key checklists you have to do is, what am I doing to retain the players I have? And unfortunately, it's the day and age we live in.
Yeah.
What am I doing? So, and I try to look at things in more of a positive way. So let's say I'm the head coach and I found out so-and-so is leaving. He's transferring out. Well, I hope he wouldn't transfer out without me and the family and them having at least a conversation first. That's the first thing I'd hope. But if let's say that already happened, they still decided they're leaving. Well, then there's two ways I can go about it. I can be bitter. I can complain on X and I can get in the group chat and talk about how bad football has become these days in high school. Or I can self-evaluate. Is there something I can do better to retain my players or do something better for them for maybe the reasons they're leaving? And I think you can go two routes with it. And I think if you go the one route over and over with, I'm going to whine and complain and how the game is changing and those things, then maybe the game's passed you by and maybe it's time to really evaluate if you still want to do this. Because we live in a day and age, in my opinion, if you're not promoting your program on the socials, it could be tough.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing right now. Like coaches are going to have to do and adapt. I believe that that is the number one way to promote your program. I mean, obviously, I mean that goes without saying, right? So if you're not doing as much as you can to have have that platform for your players and to be excited about it, you're going to struggle. And I'm not a person that even enjoys doing it, to be honest with you.
Oh, I say all the
I
time, I
I
hate the
like
guy who
yeah,
posted first, thanks for
yeah,
so and so stopping by,
yeah,
because we all have
right.
to do it. Like,
We
because
have to do it.
if we don't, the high school that's down the road 15
They're gonna
miles,
do it.
they're going
Yeah,
to
I
do
mean,
it.
I saw a post from
And
school, some percentage of kids are getting, got offers or something last year, and it's like, well, I mean, you gotta do it, man. Like, you have to promote that out there because you have to set your narrative for your program, and right now, that is how it's set. It ain't in the newspaper anymore. The journalist isn't coming out and saying, "Ah, nah, 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 nah," about no, dude, it's on Twitter, and the parents and the retweets and the kids, they're the ones that are, absorbing that, and you have the opportunity to create your own narrative, and so I believe that is a positive thing, but it's like, how much work does that take? And, like, you start seeing this new generation of coaches that are excelling at it, and the previous generation, they're if they're excelling at it, they've probably had to adapt. I mean, you think about a coach that's coached for, let's say, 20 years. Well, X wasn't a thing 20 years ago, I don't think, right? Or close to it now, maybe.
yeah, I don't,
But
it
but
would
you
just,
but
yeah,
not to the degree it is
sure.
now. Yeah, I mean, it's like you're having to constantly adapt, and
Yep.
it's happening faster and faster and faster.
Yep.
And so that's
And
just something
I think
you
the
think about.
important thing too is understanding your strengths and
Right.
understanding what your needs are. And maybe you do like some of the guys we've talked about previously on the show, like Coach Boyd, for example. he said he lets all his coaches find something they're really good at, and he lets them take off with it. Well, maybe this part is something maybe you're not the best at, and you say, hey, Coach Bolton, man, I think you'd be really great at doing this. And I
Don't
don't
give
think
anybody
it's
any ideas. Don't
no,
give
oh
anybody
yeah,
any
oh
ideas.
Coach Bolton. Hey man, how's spring been going, by the way, man? Hey,
It's been great, man.
hey, first off, guys, this is the first episode I think we've done and released since me and Jamie's coaching together. So it'll be good. I was actually talking to Coach Tatum. We're going to get him on here soon. He was like, Coach, you still got to continue being the defensive guy on the podcast, though. I said, man, I can do that. I can do that. So,
Well, you're like having a secret weapon on offense. So I'm excited to coach with you, brother. I
oh
know this
yeah,
is we've been trying to do it since 2018.
oh
So
yeah,
we finally worked out, man. It's gonna be great. It's a blessing for sure. And not only
100%.
do we get to talk on this, but now we get to have the actual X and O's
I'm
talk.
getting married 2 weeks from yesterday, and I think I'm going to end up seeing Jamie more than I see my new wife between summer and football and
That's
podcasting.
right.
So,
That's right. Yeah, man. But when I was at Ken and I brought you in, and the number one thing I asked you to do is the social media piece. One,
yeah,
you're really good at it. Two, it just took a lot off my plate. I
yeah,
mean, you talk about at a small school. Let's just say it like what it
it's
is. Like if
so
you're
much,
coached at a
man.
small school, you got to do one side of the ball. You got to coach a position. You probably have to do something with the weight room. You got to do the recruiting piece, and now you got to do the social media piece. Then you gotta deal with parents, then you gotta deal with the booster club. Like, well, dang, man.
If
The
you
one
want to
thing that
do,
you're not thinking
yeah,
about is social media.
if you want to
I
do
mean,
social media right, it takes a lot. It
yeah,
does, and that
that might be a good episode too to kind of
yeah,
go down
I
the
know we
rabbit
touched
hole.
on it a little bit in the
Mhm.
past, but I don't know how much when we talked about creating our brand, I know we hit on it.
Yeah.
Um, I think an important thing too, talking about social media real quick, is we promote our programs through social media and whatnot. One thing I think, and I'm going to share this maybe to help coaches out, but when I grew up in high school, I had two coaches. They're going to both be at my wedding in a couple of weeks. I was really close with. I would send one of them a friend request on Facebook every week, and he'd deny it. And I'm like, hey man, like I'm in junior year, like accept my friend request. And he's like, no man, I can't do it till you graduate, because my town was really bad about, like, if they saw a teacher with a beer, you're going to get fired. Like
Yeah.
that. It was just one of those
Mhm.
really like bad towns. So then I start going to some of these other districts, and I mean, there's touchdown club golf tournaments where there's free alcohol, and there are like teachers and coaches that are getting
It's different, yeah.
roundhouse. It's just
Mhm.
different. But so people kind of ask me, like my personal social media, I keep up with. I don't really care about it, but I keep up with it, and people ask me why, and like I'm public on everything. I'm not private, and I'm like, it's my way of showing kids that there's more to life than football, because when they see us, 80% probably of what they see and deal with us is about football. We do trips and community service and some other things, but I want them to maybe be scrolling one day and they see me and Coach Bolton playing golf. Oh man, I didn't know they played golf, or, maybe they see a post about you with your daughter and your son, like at the park. It's like, oh, Coach Bolton takes time to spend with his family. I think those things are so important with kids, like, because they see who you are removed from what you normally do. And I know that's getting a little bit off topic, but I think that's a super important part of this day and age, especially if you can relate to them. I think
Well,
it's huge.
and you can kind of definitely relate that back to the program too. I mean, like being able to showcase and, you want your program to be attractive. One, to retain your own athletes, right? You want to retain your talent. And if you end up attracting talent, you attract talent. And unfortunately, that's the day and age we live in. But yeah, man, the offer culture, establishing your program establishing the narrative in your program is really, really important. Um, have you seen any signs of like burnout in any of your athletes, like with this recruiting
Um,
stuff?
I wouldn't say burnout. I would say panic mode. I
Mm,
would say I've seen panic mode a lot. I've seen kids that are later in their careers considering going to the high school down the street because it's a big time ball high school, just to see if they can get recruited at a higher level. I don't know about burnout. I do see panic mode sometimes, like they're end of their junior year. They're not really at the level they think they should be, or the amount of offers they think they should be. And it's absolutely It's instead of trusting the process and keeping my head down and where my feet are, it's let me peek at this grass. Is this grass a little bit greener? That's what I see more of versus the burnout.
Yeah, and that's troublesome too. I mean, I'm obviously probably everybody listening to this has probably gone or seen some of that, and yeah, we've gotten it both ways. Like we've had kids come in, we've had kids leave. Like it's unfortunately a part of the football culture now. But what seems to be happening is recruiting is happening later, and so obviously the kid gets to the end of his junior year and he's like, I got kind of one more shot at this thing. Should I give this other school a chance? And what we've seen is it really hasn't changed much. Like the 5'10", 200-pound running back that runs a 4.8 40 is likely not going to get a better offer at a different school, even if it's, in a different state or a higher classification. It's like it's not going to happen. It's just not. Now, playing a higher level of football may be more beneficial from a developmental standpoint. I think that's a better argument than than like the recruiting piece. And then you could also say, well, maybe that does give him a bump
Yeah.
with the competition. So I think there are some things that parents have to consider, and those are hard. Those are difficult decisions, I'm sure. And then you probably have the low hanging fruit where the coaches at the other school are saying, "Hey, man, you don't have any," or not coaches, but it could be. It's usually generally parents, but it's like, "Hey, man, why does this kid not have any ball? Why does your kid not have any offers? This kid on our team has offers. Why don't you come on over here?" And I think that's where you get into ethical concerns with tampering and all that. I mean, obviously that happens, or even the personal trainer. I'm a personal trainer too, so it's like, I'm in that same category, but I'm sure there's some low hanging fruit opportunities for people to try to take advantage of and maybe even exploit kids and families for that purpose. So that's something that's just a crazy part of what we're dealing with.
I would say on the reverse side of this, the burnout, I get burnout. I used to get burnout
Okay.
on it. Well,
Mm.
it's more because you can teach and explain and they still sometimes won't get it, and that's the hardest part, um, you know, in my experience with colleges recruiting high school football, the biggest time they're going to do it is in the spring around their spring practice schedule when it's legal. When they come by in the fall, it is specifically because they have their eyes on the kid that they're wanting to watch play, build that rapport relationship so that kid will commit with them. And that's kind of how it's been. And, you know, it's a big miscommunication thing. I remember in the NCISAA, like you can't do spring practice until the championships are over. So you do it the last 2 weeks of May. Well, the very last week of May is dead for college coaches. Like they can't come watch it all, but they can come the week prior. And a big burnout thing was why are no colleges coming to watch our spring practice? It was a big burnout for me. And it's like a lot of them already come in the spring and they watch the kids do individual
Right.
workouts,
And they can
so
only come so many times to a campus.
yes. And that's the thing. It's like understanding the rules behind it and all of these things. So that's a big thing. And, you talked about camps earlier. I think there are really good camps, and I think there are some camps that may not be as beneficial. And I think, you know, discussing that with your head coach or a coach on your staff could help steer you to the right camps. If you are an 8th grader and you're going to the Clemson camp for the experience, by all means go. You know what I mean? But it's like, don't think you're going to go there as an 8th grader and get dropped an offer on and they're going to start recruiting you, because that's very, I won't say
Very rare.
it's very rare. Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, going through it a couple times, like you're saying, like it's really okay. If you have sophomore tape, it'll start a little earlier, right? If you have sophomore tape, then obviously you can get that out to, the recruiters. They're not going to look at JV film. But if you got sophomore tape, it'll start a little earlier. But now day and age, man, like they don't have the resources to recruit the sophomore unless they're just a freak. So then you're okay, right before maybe your junior year. Okay, you go to some camps. That's what I would suggest. Like you got sophomore tape, go to some camps that you feel like is a reach, you feel like is right online, and maybe go to a lower level camp for you. And then now you have some verified times. I will say this: if you're a skilled athlete and you know you're not going to run a sub 4.6
Be
40,
careful.
do not run. They will mark you out immediately. You are done.
Yep.
Not saying you can't come back and run it, but that just automatically shows a big school. Like if you're a receiver, running back's probably one of the hardest to get recruited at. Maybe the next one be quarterback, because you can't miss on those two. And that's something that I've heard directly from recruiters. You cannot miss on a quarterback and you cannot miss on a running back. And so those are the two hardest things. And if you're going to get a run of 4.6, you better not. You're not getting offered by a Power 5, Power 4, unless you're just a big dude.
Yeah.
And that's at receiver. It's at receiver or running back. And I'm sure there are some exceptions to that. But in my experience with multiple athletes that have had great careers in high school,
Yep.
it's like, hey man, why is my kid not getting recruited? He's done everything he's been asked to do by that school. He went to camp, he ran at camp, he was the number one running back at the camp or whatever, and blah 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 blah. Why didn't they? So I asked the schools, like, why aren't you? What's the issue? He's a great kid, great academics. He performed well at camp. He's got great film. He said, Coach, let me pull it up. He pulled it up on his iPad. He said, Coach, he ran a 4.6, 740. We can't offer that kid. Well, you tell the parent that, well, they're going to they transferred. But it's like, you're not transferring away from your 40 time, dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and that kid's a great football player. I mean, he's probably going to have a great college career. And that's just what's unfortunate about it is sometimes they just won't take your word or the recruiter's word. So he left with the same amount of offers that he got. Or he ended up with the same amount of offers. But parents got to do what parents got to do. And I get that.
100%.
But that's my experience with it.
And I think the biggest thing is, and this is kind of the last part of this segment is what are the disconnects and how do you connect that as a coach? And here's what I'm going to be working on as a new athletic director. I think every spring of your freshman year, there is a seminar ran about college recruiting from an athletic department standpoint. And you have the specifics per sport, because what I've learned in the last month is it's completely different by sport. Football and basketball are about pretty much the same, but like tennis, I found out that you don't really get recruited on your high school team with tennis. You play in these tournaments that are ran for, if you want to play college tennis, you're going to go to these tournaments. And some different things, and, basketball, travel and club and AAU matters a little bit as well. But I think the biggest thing for that disconnect is having informational sessions that lets everybody know, that here is what you have to do. And I think it's important, and Cannon put us on this, one-on-one meetings are so beneficial. It allows you to meet with your players, but also have the availability for the parents who want to set one-on-one meetings up with you and give them the rundown from A to Z on recruiting, what position they play, what are typically the sizes at each level. And I think getting ahead of the curve as early as you can will help all those disconnects.
Yeah, I think being more proactive than reactive, right? So if you say, okay, families, and a good time to do that would be in the off season, obviously, but you could obviously do it in season if you have the time to manage it. But I would set up meetings with families and players and say, what goals do you have in the recruiting process? Where do you think your athlete can go? What do you want to study? What questions do you have about the process? And then probably have like a guide sheet of like NCAA rules and regulations of contact periods and all that. I think that's something that is really, really important, because really you're probably only going to have about 10 to 15 kids max that really kind of want to play. I mean, obviously if you're a really, really big school, it could be, 20s or whatever, but I mean, that's something that I think is another way for coaches to adapt, because they're going to, you could talk about what fit and where they've already been evaluated. And you can kind of follow up every so often and say, this is where we're at in the process. Obviously, you're going to get phone calls from those parents, but it at least gives you the opportunity to, again, state the narrative of like what's happening. Don't let them go out in the community where, you've been silent for 6 months on everything. Now they're going to go hear stuff from, hey man, is he getting recruited? Where's he? I don't know. I haven't heard anything. Well, that's the worst thing that can happen.
100%.
But it's also the hardest thing for the coach to do, because you got other crap you got to deal with.
Yep.
But now again, we're in this state of like the number one thing that parents and kids care about. Didn't say it's the only thing, but the number one thing that they care about is their future beyond high school football.
There are
And
kids winning state championships that are transferring to schools that they win the state championship at.
correct.
And
Yeah.
and you have to
That's
look
happened.
at
It happened with me. Yeah, we
what,
lost 2 or 3 kids after we won it. Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like why is that happening? You
Mhm.
know, evaluating, okay, we just won the state championship and I have a couple kids that are looking to leave. Like what you know what I mean? It's like I think that's a very complicated question that you have to evaluate, you know what
Well,
I
and I
mean?
think too, they're being, I think a lot of times it may be that, okay, you have some early I think what hurts too is early success. I think the better the kid is younger, the more they anticipate the higher level that they can play. Like, the expectations are now a little bit higher in their own mind about where they project.
Sure.
And then you're like, "Well, no, man, like, you're you're probably not. You're still
Yeah.
probably a subdivision guy, or this is what the recruiter's saying that you
Yeah.
are."
Well, how many kids
Uh,
have we seen that were freaks and wreck in middle school and then
they never grow again.
they never grow. They hit ninth
Yep,
grade and they everybody starts catching up to their
yep,
size and now they're not
yep.
bigger, faster, stronger than everybody else. And it's like you're an average high school football player now.
Yeah.
You know, that's a big
It's
part
just
of it.
it's such a difficult thing to deal with, and you gotta kinda roll with the punches on that, but yeah, I think being ahead of the game, and then they're gonna make their decision based on look, you're not the only one talking to them, right?
Sure.
You got other coaches, trainers,
Yep.
uncles that know more than anything that they haven't played, and, back in the '80s,
Mhm.
they were great, but now their uncle's the expert in the recruiting field, so, like, all that stuff is something that you have to navigate as a coach, which is obviously unfair, but if you're gonna do this job, you better go ahead and anticipate that, and you gotta
Mhm.
be okay with that. If you don't wanna do it, then get out, or don't be a head coach. I mean, that's
Yep.
something else too, like, man, you're not head coaches anymore,
Yep.
right? We don't have to deal with that as much, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so that is kinda nice right now, to be honest with you.
Well, I
So
think and that's also a super important part of this episode. Hey guys, listen. Well, here's something that I found out after becoming a head coach, and I think any assistant, any coordinator listening to this episode right now, you need to hear these two things. Number one, the only blanket between you and parents is the head coach. If you're a coordinator, if you're an assistant coach, in retrospect, you don't have to deal with parents at all because if your coach runs a tight ship, he's going to say, listen, if there are any parental issues, please bring them to the head coach. He's gonna protect you. That's how I did it. I told all our coaches, if parents come up to you after the game and they are loving on you and saying, great job, all that's wonderful. We love that. But if they ever come to you and they're like, we need to talk. Like, I got an issue. Just say respectfully, sir. Like, our policy is all these meetings. We have a 24-hour rule, and these need to be set up with Coach Martin. Like, I have nothing to do with
Mhm.
that. And I think
And
coaches
I've dealt with that
appreciate
as
that.
and I've dealt with that as an assistant, and
Mhm.
I don't mind being in the meeting, like, and I actually prefer it, and
Yeah,
honestly, with the as an assistant that's been given basically full autonomy of, like, the offense in the last 2 roles, it is my, responsibility to communicate what we're doing from, like, an offensive
yeah,
if it could become something like, either playing time or
sure.
that kinda thing, when it comes to recruiting, that's probably gonna fall on the head coach's
That
deal,
was my
but
second thing. Like,
right,
if
sorry,
like,
yeah, yeah.
no, you're good. If you're going to become a head coach, expect one of the number one things you do is deal with recruiting because that's the two things. For all of you that are a little bit younger and you're pushing, you really, really want to be that head coach. You want to be a head coach. Understand once you become a head coach, it is no longer just about the X's and O's. And
Mhm.
that was one thing that I kind of knew before my first head job, but it really sank in with my
Yeah,
first job.
I agree, especially at the bigger schools, right?
Mhm.
You got more people to deal with, you got more meetings to go to, you don't have time to mess with the X's and O's anymore, and really, you don't have time to coach a position, so it's like, what do you wanna be? Do you wanna be a CEO, or do you wanna be kind of a manager, and so good on both of that. I think having the goal to be a head coach is one thing, but just know that it's the higher you go on that, the further away you get from the game. Now, I think in small schools, it could be done, at Cannon,
You're doing everything.
you're doing everything. So, like, not I mean, we had great coaches on staff,
Yeah.
but yeah, you got to coach one side of the ball probably. You
Oh,
know, so
I remember I was calling the defense, coaching the linebackers, and I was also helping coach the OL. Like, man, I was all
it's a
over the
grind, man.
place.
It's a grind. And doing the film, I think I was doing like drawing too. Like,
Yeah. Hey, man, I'm currently Bolton has me at practice, filming the drone in my left hand, and I'm simulating the corner's hip angles.
man,
So
you're giving us the cap, man,
yeah,
with the
and
drone
spotting the ball all at
and
the same
spot the
time.
ball.
So,
So
hey, man,
excellent.
ultimate GA. That's what my name is for Bolton. Right now, I'm charting the film for him. I'm printing his practice scripts. I'm the GA, man. I love it. Love every minute
I'm
of it.
just sitting down, you know, just hanging out, man.
I will say though, man, that this last week has been really fun,
It
and
has.
it I don't think it was anything we were anticipating to happen, but some
Mhm.
things happened, and I ended up getting on staff with you, and man, just the guys we've been around too. Coach Bolware has been great as the head guy, and man, just some of the offensive coaches that we've gotten to work with, man. Coach Jolly, dude, what a guy,
He's been
man.
coaching since 1980,
I
and
want
he
that's
still gets around great, and he
15
still
years
gives
before
kids
I was
hell.
born.
Yeah,
Ain't that
that's
crazy?
wild, man. That's wild. Yeah, he started coaching when my dad graduated high school.
Wow.
It's
Wow.
crazy.
That is.
And, so yeah, it's been a really good experience over there. We're excited for this year for sure. All right, man. You ready for rapid fire?
Let's do it.
All right. So you got a really good one on this, and you actually have a video out on YouTube, I think, about what's the most effective way to use Huddle
Yep.
or X in Recruit. Just do Huddle. Talk about
Sure.
how you kind of do the Huddle highlights.
So when I was a head coach, let me start back. When I first became a head coach, I knew recruiting was a big thing I had to be super involved in, and that was one talking with you and how it has been before I took over after you left, and then I actually think John Boggs. I was talking with him one day about it, and he showed me a packet that a lot of coaches in South Carolina, they create this packet, so when they go, coaches can kind of flip through it. Well, I'm a tech guy, so as soon as I hear packet, I'm like, okay, what can I do from a technology standpoint that's gonna be the same thing, but it's going to look really cool and be easy to use for this day and age. So I created a little Google site. It's the same thing as a packet. It's prospect sheets for every class, then individual profiles that just kind of say who they are, what they're interested in, major, and their measurables. Well, the worst thing I found out was when these coaches came by and I pulled their profiles up and I huddle or hyperlink their huddle links. When I click on it, it pulled their page up and there's nothing. Like there's no videos, there's no highlights. So I was like, okay. So I learned real quick. All right, not only do I have to create a way to distribute information easily, I got to educate these guys on how to make a freaking huddle highlight also.
Mhm.
So basically what I did one day was sit down and just kind of went through and showed how to make a huddle highlight reel. And it's like anything that's cumulative. Every game you play, go ahead and star the plays that you like so they're all there. So I made a YouTube video just strictly to put on our Google site. And the other day I checked it. There are um, 17,000 views and over like 160 likes. I had a dad message me on Twitter, no clue who he was.
Wow.
Hey coach, found your YouTube video. I was having trouble with this. Can you help me? And I was like, yeah, can you just screen record it? And then I was like, you know what, man, like honestly, if you just give me your login, I'll figure it out for you. I hopped on 3 minutes later. I said, hey, figured it out here. I fixed it. And it's like, I just never thought that video would help that many people because I only made it specific for our Google site, but for it to work on the Google site, it had to be public. So I think just educating your players on how powerful Huddle is. And it's like, you got to have film for them to see, guys, and if there's 60 players, we can't make your Huddle highlights for you. Now, what can we do? We can tell you exactly what kind of clips you need to have. And then if you schedule a meeting with me, I had kids come in, hey coach, what kind of clips do I need? Well, let's pull you what you have up. Well, here's why this isn't a good clip. Here's why you don't have earmarked. This is a great clip because even though you didn't make the play, you had cap integrity, you used your hands, you got off the block and you pursued the ball. That's a beautiful clip from an interior D lineman, so it's
Yeah,
like,
and just kind of having that laid out for each position
mm-hmm,
group too would be great.
yep,
And something else too. And I'm just gonna kind of jump into this next one, but like go-to strategies to stay organized. Like
yep,
one thing that one of our parents actually at Canon showed me, and I'm sure I think there's a lot of programs you can buy and like companies that provide similar things. But he set me up with Salesforce, and Salesforce obviously is a program that a lot of businesses and things use to kind of, I guess, organize communication between, companies and sales and all that stuff. So he set me up on, it would have like all the schools. It would be like a database of like all the schools and their contacts and the coaches that are on the staff, and then each player would have like a profile, and then you would go in, you can like automatically send emails to the school from the player's email address. I could do it from my email address, and you can kind of flood with emails as one of the strategies. And then you can, go in there and see you can get on there and say, okay, he's got this offer, this offer, this offer. And so for me, it kind of helped organize where each kid was, and then where the communication was for each kid, and then their list of schools that they were going through. And I thought that was very, very helpful. You could do it on a spreadsheet for sure, but just having that organization to know where each kid is, and that way, when the parent comes in for the meeting, you're like, okay, look, on this date, this date, this date, this date, these are the contact dates, these are the emails that I sent out. I could see when they open the email, and then here's the correspondence with that. And I think that just provides a higher level of transparency for both parties, you and the parent and the player. And that way, okay, yeah, coach is actually not BSing me here. He's not saying one thing. He's actually showing me this. And I think honestly that could help protect you too. Like if that's something that that parents are complaining about, well, you have the evidence,
Yep.
right? You could see, all right, the recruiter came by on this date. I sent him emails on this date. He's opened this. You can see when they open the file, if he hasn't opened the file, and then you can. So it's just really, really good. However you want to do that, but
Sure.
one of the programs is Salesforce that I use.
Well, and that's kind of why I made the recruiting website as well. I mean, number one of our jobs is distribute information. So I made business cards with me, like my info on it, and on the back it had the QR code that would take coaches straight to our recruiting website. And my goal was every coach that came by, here, coach, take this. Every next time you want to recruit our players, all of them are there for you. But then also, all of our parents were aware of that website and they understood the way it was distributed. So that was just a way also to let everybody know, like, I'm doing everything I can to get your kid recruited. Like there are some coaches, and this isn't bad, but there are some coaches that just wait for coaches to come to them and they say, check out this kid, check out this kid. You know what I mean? I'm giving everyone the same equal opportunity. Like every kid is listed on there, whether they want to play or they don't want to play. Now, if a kid tells me straight up, coach, I don't want to play college ball, I'm just in here for the fun, I'll make sure the coach who's recruiting knows that if they ask about him. You know what I mean? So, yeah, man, tell me this. What's a success story from your recruiting experience?
Yeah, I mean, several. One, we could talk about, I guess we can say his name, Henry Anthony. I mean, I think that's what's cool about this is me and you were both involved in this process. So when I left Cannon, Henry, I think was going into his senior year. He got injured, um, for a good part of
Going
his
junior year when you
junior
left.
year. That's right. So, but he's injured his sophomore year or something.
Yes,
So yeah,
sophomore year. Yep.
so he came back from a major injury, and then so I'm at Kings Mountain, and uh, Coach Ledutko from Liberty comes by,
Mm-hmm.
and he's recruiting our tight end. He's a freak, and as a wide receiver tight end kind of kid, and so he says, "Is there any other tight ends in the area?" I was like, "Yes, you need to go to Cannon. They got a dude.
Yep.
He's 6'3.5", 6'4", whatever he is. Gets off the ball well, plays both sides. Great kid. Looking to go Ivy." But I think, but he had no offers at the time. He asked me, "Hey man, this kid got
Yep.
offers?" Like, nah. And so I think he went up to you guys like the next day
Mm-hmm. It was
and
funny
then
because
spoke to him.
he was the first one, and in the same day, I want to say UNCC and another one,
Yeah.
like
So
back to back to
yeah,
back to
so
back.
Leducto called me back after he saw him and
Mm-hmm.
said, "Hey man, should I offer this kid?" I'm like, "Yes." He's got no offers.
Yes.
I said, and his thing was, well, is it gonna give him, more offers down the road? I said, "But no, man, if you go first, that's gonna give him a lot of he's gonna think, man, a lot of you guys."
Yeah. And
And
he
so
did the whole
yeah,
time throughout the process. He did.
yeah. He
And
ended
that
up not going.
relationship.
But that's good on Coach Leducko for doing that
Yeah.
anyway. But yeah, I think that's a success story that I like. I think that was a really, really good one. Um, I think Henry had a lot of opportunities he was, I'm sure late for him, quote unquote.
Yep.
And I know that was really stressed out, like most
Yeah.
kids are. But he stuck it. He stuck with it at Cannon, and ended up working out for him
And one thing I will
academically
say,
and you know
like, one thing I will say is, like, him and his family were also very understanding of his unique situation with the injury. You know, they knew that you were doing what you needed to do proactively before you left, and then that was continuous. So they're great family. You know, it's funny, I actually just got a invite to his graduation party, and I text him and his dad Keith,
I
great
got the
great
same
guy.
invite. Yeah, they invited me
I
too.
said, I sent back, I said, "Hey guys, appreciate the invite. I think I got something important that day." "Oh yeah, wait, I'm getting married." So it's on the same day we're getting married. I said, "That's the only reason I won't be there." But yeah, no, I think for me, um, a success story is that I have developed some really good relationships with these coaches that have came by the last 2 years, that they will still call me and ask me questions about a kid that I
Yep.
know of. And there's a kid that was at Cannon. He's no longer there. He went to another high school, and one of the Ivy League schools went by, watched him at spring practice, and he called me that night and said, "Hey man, I remember you telling me about this kid. What else can you tell me?" And we just sat there and talked. And um, I would just say that the relationships you build with those guys, and they know the ones who are honest and straight up with them, they really will rely on what you say. Because I would be straight up with the coach, like, "Man, this kid is a great dude, and I think his ceiling is not even anywhere near met." And I think that kid ended up getting offered by that school, and I think he's gotten 8 or 9 since then. So
That's awesome.
not
Yeah,
that I did anything in particular for him, but it's just still, it's awesome of, "Hey coach, I know you're not the head coach at so and so anymore, but I know you know this kid. What can you tell me about him? Like, what do you
yeah.
think still?" So that's a big one to me.
All right, we're done. Or we're gonna do one more.
We go one more. Your pick.
All right, so we'll both speak to this, but so how can your players build a brand while still staying grounded in team culture? That's a tough one.
It is. I
How do you
I
what
think
advice would you give your
yeah.
players
So
to do that?
I look at it the same way that we look at it.
Mhm.
We can still be all for the team and build our own personal coaching brand. And I think
Yep.
it's still able to do that with kids. You can still have quote unquote selfish ways that benefit the team. You know what I mean?
It makes sense. What you're saying, I think what I hear you saying is what my sacrifices as a player
Yeah.
will not only benefit the team,
Hmm.
but it also benefit me, and
Yes.
trusting that the coaches that recruit me, my coaches in high school will promote that. And then I think that's exactly what you're saying. Like, allow yourself to sacrifice for the people around you.
Yes.
It's like, be that servant leader, because people genuinely remember those things over the stats or over the accolades that you get personally. It's almost like what you did for me or what you did for someone else will ultimately be your legacy. And I think having that, okay, well, how do we build that brand? I mean, I think you want to highlight that as much as you can. Whether that be on X or personally, but you want other people to speak your praises. I think
Mm-hmm.
that I don't know, for me, if I'm recruiting,
Yeah.
if I'm hearing person 1, person 2, person 3 say all these things about a player versus that person's highlight video highlighting that, like the hype video, whatever.
Yeah.
I wanna hear that more. So I think being grounded in, your values of like hard work,
Yep.
commitment, loyalty. Um, Not saying that if you transfer, you're not loyal, but it's like those things you want to, you can highlight those things. And I think
Yep.
that also feeds into team culture. But there's nothing wrong
Mm-mm.
with wanting to be the best player on your team. There's
No.
nothing wrong with wanting to have the best stats in the world, because ultimately, if you're the best player on the team and you're working towards that, then you're going to elevate your team. So there's nothing that coaches want that from you. Now, I
Yep.
think there's the opposite of that, and I don't want to ramble too much here,
Mm-hmm.
but the opposite of that is, well, how do you treat your teammates on the way up?
Yep.
Are you going to help them come along too? I think that's the big thing that I see with athletes. It's like they have no problem working really, really hard. They have no problem helping the team win
Yep.
as far as like on the field performance. Where I see the biggest lack is how are they in the locker room, and do they lead their teammates to also become the best versions of themselves?
Yeah.
And I think it's harder now because the attention is all on that player from external pressure for that one player to do it. They feel like if I give any part of myself to anybody else, I'm gonna be left behind. And I think that's the sad part of the player psyche right now.
Oh, I think a big thing too is, are you the same coach or the same player when you win by 40 and lose by 40? Are you still cleaning the locker room just like you would after a big win? Are you still, you know, are you still dapping your coaches up and saying, "Hey, coach, I'll see you Sunday," after a win as you do as with a loss? I think, are you still grounded in being the same person regardless of the factors that are happening? That to me, like you said, and what you said was really good in terms of other people praising you. I've never heard Belichick or Saban one time argue if they're the GOAT or not. Everybody
Exactly.
else is. You know what I mean? It's like
Let somebody
everyone
else
else is
do it for you. Yep.
100%.
But no, that's really good. And I think too, as coaches, you know, coaches are in a strange position now,
Uh-huh.
and I'm hoping and praying. My prayer is that coaches stay grounded in that too. I think sometimes coaches can be the most toxic humans in the world, just like any other human. We're all imperfect,
100%.
right? We all have good and we all have bad. I'm talking to myself too. I want to make sure that Jamie, stays grounded in what really matters and why we really got into this.
Yeah,
I know it sounds
100%.
cheesy to talk about, but I know people are listening, going through the same stuff. It's like, do I want to sell my soul
Yeah.
to this other stuff that really, doesn't matter in the long
Mhm.
run, right? Like, what is your legacy going to be? Is it going to be you're the winningest coach of all time? Or is it, like, who really cares about that? People remember what you did for them.
How you
They won't
treated them.
remember exactly how you treat them, what you did for them, the sacrifices you make, not how many wins you have. And I'm hoping that our game doesn't fall into that more and more because it certainly is, and it's always
Yeah.
been there.
Mhm.
But
Well, a big
that's
thing for
something that,
me,
that I want to see in our community.
well, big thing, and back on the coach's standpoint is, I've heard almost every single coach I've ever played for or coached with in some version or another say, control what you can control. But including me, how many times did we see coaches not controlling the controllables? How many, like, don't get me wrong, like, we've seen Lane Kiffin do it. Remember the clipboard video, dude? It
Mhm.
got some major air. I mean, we've all had a call go against us where we have gotten upset and probably done something that we wouldn't normally do. But it's like, man, it's like, sometimes there's things that just aren't controllable, and hopefully if I can shed any light, because I've had a situation or two like this, when something doesn't go right and someone departs your staff, like, don't be that guy to remove the coach off huddle and not allow him to get any of his stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, control what you can control. There's a reason someone may be departing or doing this, and it's like, and in simple terms, don't be petty. Like,
Yeah.
like, hey man, I appreciate everything you did. I'm not 100% happy that you're leaving, but that's a compliment, man. Like, who you were when you were here, we're losing a major piece. You know, let me know when you get all your stuff off huddle, anything I can help you with, just let me know. And then whenever you have everything, we'll remove you off and we'll get it going. And I think that's a big thing. It's like, be grounded in who you always are. Let's not be petty. That, I think that's a huge thing for people to hear.
It is, and I'm hoping the game continues to fall into the hands of coaches that do it for the right reasons, and the guys that are coaching now can really think about, all right, going into this season, what do I want for my legacy? If I get fired, I get fired. Like, I'm going to do it the right way, and not saying you shouldn't adapt to the times, right? We're still trying to benefit the kids ultimately. So if we need to adapt our mindset to help our kids get recruited and do what they need to do, they're going to learn some lessons along the way. Don't get me wrong. I'm just praying for our game because we're going to be in this thing for the next 30 years.
Lord
And
willing.
yeah, and yeah, if we can hang in there,
Yeah.
right? And it is exciting.
Yeah.
And but I just pray for this game. It's the greatest game on earth. I sound like Coach Wallace.
All
Shout out
right.
to shout out to Moose.
Well, here's another
But I
thing I
love
think that's
that. I love
interesting.
the passion there with him,
Like,
man.
I
Like,
would love, in the last 20 years of South Carolina football, high school football, I would love to know all the coaches who got fired based on performance. And I would also love to know where were they at in terms of character and team building and doing things the right way?
Right.
Because I would be willing to bet 90% of the guys who got fired due to lack of performance also weren't in alignment with doing things the right way. Like they
probably so.
sacrifice, and I don't know. I'm just spitballing that
Yeah,
out there
it'd be interesting to
because,
see.
like, and don't get me wrong, there's some competitive schools that want to win at all costs. You know what I mean? But sometimes lack of performance is the reason, and it's a true valid reason, but there may be other things behind the scenes that, yes,
Underlying things going on
you
that's
know,
contributing to that.
that
Yeah.
maybe would have saved their job when they
Mhm.
didn't win as much as they normally do, you know?
Right.
So that's something to think about, you know?
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure. Well, it's a good conversation, man. Praying for all the kids out there going through this stuff as 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, and coaches too. Yeah, man, it's been a great one, and I guess we'll see you guys in the next one.
Yep, guys, don't forget Team Builder promo code CoachSpeak, 30-day free trial. You got nothing to lose. I think it's something to look at. When I was a head strength coach, I literally had spreadsheets I had to print out every cycle, every 4 weeks, and it took me a lot of time to put them in sheet protectors. Eliminates all of that, man. And I think at the very minimum, get the free trial, use it yourself, throw in your workouts, check it out. And then also Pro Quick Draw, they have a 7-day free trial as well that we're still running in our show notes. And guys, appreciate y'all. See you on the next one.
See you guys.
Thanks for tuning into the Coach Speak podcast. If you're interested in being a guest speaker on the show, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at coachspeakpodcast1@gmail.com. And if you have a question for our Q&A segment, don't forget to submit it through the form in the episode description. We appreciate your support, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.